What's going on, guys? Back in another episode. Episode 76, I believe, is what we're at. So sweet and exciting. This episode, I want to dive into, I'd say, not necessarily a growth, part of growth. When I think of men growing, and one of the big things that decouples growth versus sort of stagnation is around honesty with themselves. And probably more so if you are looking at um, challenging your ego. So I was thinking about it this week. I'm in India, New Delhi, India, and so I had 26ish hours on the plane to sit with my thoughts and to kind of just figure out, okay, what's going to be the next episode? What is it I want to talk about? How do I want to share it? And in having a couple conversations with guys on the plane, it it's really interesting. I was sitting next to a guy. His name is Arian, and he was in Amsterdam, and he'll actually be here. So it's a really cool story. We're gonna actually try to find each other in Indy 500 in the next couple weeks or whatever when that happens, because he's gonna fly there and he'll be flying back in order for the race. He's been doing it for like 7 years or something like that. Super successful guy. We were chatting and having a really good time on the plane. And one of the things, so we started kind of getting into at the end of the flight was just around, he loves cars. I love cars. We're talking all about that stuff. And he has like an Austin Martin and I think like a Mini Cooper that he has like completely rebuilt, souped up, and is just like a total monster on the track. And he said he gets less judgment when he drives a Mini Cooper. He said, but when I drive my Aston Martin, he's like, I have to be careful. Like, I have to actually make sure that it stays in garage because people in Amsterdam will just be like, if I can't have it, then nobody can have it, and we'll just try to damage it. And he's like, and I just like, it doesn't like that just doesn't understand. I can't make sense of that. And I said, it's very interesting. I said, America, I said, it's less so because he's like, I love America because, it's everyone's like out there like, no, like you can do it. You can do it too. And it's not always the case. And I said, well, sometimes. I said, I've definitely gotten hate for different things. I said, but it just varies depending on the person. So we're kind of unpacking a lot of that, saying that just because one person's successful doesn't mean that other people can't. Like it's not like a zero sum game that if you're successful in one area, that means you have to suppress somebody else. It just means that there's a sense of value exchange, right? Value is I can help you with something and you can help me with something. And when we deem it valuable, you pay money for it. And money is just the accrual of more resources to be able to go do something else with. And so, when we were talking about that, and I said, but one of the big fundamental things with that to decouple is, well, how do I get in the right mindset to be able to grow? And I said, and one of those things is really like decoupling your ego, because you cannot grow in any of the areas that you refuse to look at. Like, none of us were born successful. None of, I'm sure there are, that's great and wonderful. But for the vast majority of guys that I see that grow and become something like truly spectacular, they didn't start there. They had to humbly work their way through. How am I going to work at it? What am I going to go do? Okay, this area I'm very weak in. So who can I go learn from? Who can I partner with in order to go rectify that part of my life so that I can continue to keep growing? And so, your ego will tell you that you're doing fine, right? You're a good dad, you're a good provider, you're a good guy. But what if good isn't what you were really meant for? What if that really wasn't what you were built for? See, good comes with a quiet partner. It's good enough. And once you accept good enough, growth stops. In the 7 levels of energy, that's like level 3. You're kind of capped at the glass ceiling where you're doing good, but you're not doing great. But you're okay with not doing great because you can rationalize to yourself why good is good enough. And meanwhile, while you're watching other guys win, build more, lead bigger, live bigger lives, you call it out and you'll say, like, must be nice. And then in 5 minutes later, you'll say, meh, I'm good where I'm at. Or at least I'm sure, them having the car, well, yeah, but then, I can only imagine the maintenance on that. Well, I don't even want to deal with that. Like, I can barely deal with the maintenance on myself. And so you rationalize why, like, this level is okay for you. And that must be nice piece, right, is a very small dip into level 1 energy. where you think that other people can do this, but then there's something wrong with you, like, but you can't do it. Must be nice for them to have this, and this, or must be nice for them to have the opportunities to go do this and this and this. But here's why it's not okay for me. And then we very quickly rationalize back to, but at least I have this, at least I have this, and this is why this is okay for me, and this is the level that I'm okay living and being at. Okay. And so, really one of the things, and this is really my engineering hat in, which is getting to root cause. One of the things that I'm really good at is getting to root cause, because I've practiced that muscle over and over and over again. Whether it was growing up on a farm and something didn't work, and then we had to adjust and say, okay, well, if this isn't working, then we try this. And sometimes you just continue to just keep trying fixes, but you'll spend all of your time working at trying to get that thing done instead of identifying root cause. And so if it's, for instance, if pipes freeze, right? Do you know exactly where the coldest point is going to be in the pipe so that you can make sure that that stays warmest? um, or keep the heat so that you don't have to worry about bursting a pipe, and then you don't have water, and then you have to go fix it from there. Implements break, and okay, is it breaking because that pin was wore out, or is it that you're just trying to use the tool outside of what it was actually meant for? Right, drilling down. Why are these things sort of happening? And that's true not necessarily just within farm life, but just in your everyday life. If you get through the day and you realize that you just don't have enough energy, well, are you spending your energy wisely? Or are you wasting your energy in so many different locations that then by the end of the day, the things that you really want to go do, you don't have the time and energy for. So now you're stuck in this dissonance where I would like to be able to go do more, but I can barely hold on to the things of what I'm doing today. Well, your brain is trying to serve in two different areas. You want to do more, but you're stuck at where you're at. So you have to decouple and say, where I'm at, I'm limited and shackled by confirmation bias, limiting biases, limiting beliefs that's keeping me here, that I have to identify what those are so that I can let go of them and enter into a new phase. Because let's face it, guys in general, when you go and you're 18 and you start out on your own life, and you have, the whole day is yours. You can do anything that you want to go do in a day. You go to work, and then you go work out for 2 hours, and then whatever it is, you can fill your entire day. Well, at some point, you then find a partner, which then says, well, now I have to carve out time for me and for that person. And then the more that you develop it and you get it married and under a household, and then you have more responsibilities, every single stage of life presents you with more responsibilities, which then you get the opportunity to say, am I going to lean in to that next version of myself and reorient my life and find efficiencies? Or am I just tapping out and saying, I can't do anymore? Because we all have the same 24 hours within a day. It just depends on where we choose to focus our time and what we choose to go do in our days, day in and out. And so a lot of that is being able to unpack their life honestly. You have to be able to unpack your life and look at it through an honest lens. Are you looking at where you're falling short? Do you even know where you're falling short without defending it, without rationalizing, without having to soften it? Because most men don't lack the discipline, they lack the clarity on what they're actually failing at. And if we take that discipline and we apply it and open it up to being open to recognize, hey, I'm not my best version of myself. My best version of myself is going to be sometime in the future. Then we can humbly look at what isn't serving us and where we just are falling short, or where not even we're falling short, but where the current model of reality isn't serving the next version of reality. I can't go be an entrepreneur, or I can't go be a husband while still being selfish. You can, it just doesn't work as efficiently. And so being able to understand what are the things, your model of realities that needs to get redefined or looked at so that you can grow into the next version of yourself. And the next version of yourself, once you become that next version, then you get to have all the things, and then you get to do all the things, and you get to have all the things that goes along with it. So if it's married, you have to become a guy that's worthy of being married. Then you get to be married, and then you get to have all the experiences and all the wonderfulness that comes along with being married, which is something that I commonly hear, right? From girls and guys, which is, okay, he's not ready to settle down yet, because in his mind, he's still, I need to go out to the clubs every single day. I still need to go spend 2 or 3 hours in the gym, and I have my own life that I want to go do. That's fine, but then your model of reality is that you're living a single person's life and you're trying to have a little bit of time for a partner versus I need to reconstruct and take the model of reality, which is I'm going to spend all day on all the things I want to go do, and then look at it from the lens of there needs to be space for things I want to go do. There needs to be space for the things that they want to go do, and then there needs to be space for things that we go do together. And then once you create that space in your model of reality, then you get to go endure and experience all of the wonderfulness that exists in all of it. Which then leads me into the next piece, which is your almost, your strongest intellectual piece, which is you can't fix that which you're not measuring. And then you can't measure that in which you're not aware of. So in business, a lot of times when you go into a business or when I go into businesses and I see, there's essentially these KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. What are the things that you really care about? And what you find is for businesses that are kind of floundering, they don't have a really strong KPI. Well, once you find out what the KPI is, then you can say, well, what does it need to be successful in order for that KPI to move? That might be revenue, that might be profits, that might be whatever the right piece of it is. Revenue growth, op profits. Like you can go through all these fancy terms to figure out what is the thing that you really care about most. Then you get to deconstruct that and say, well, what are all the things that needs to be true in order for that to continue to move forward into the direction that you want it to be? We don't really translate that as well into our personal lives because when we talk about KPIs in our personal life, then people kind of get, well, do I need to do it? Do I really not need to do it? That seems like really official, like heavy stuff. I do work all day. I don't want to bring work into my household. That's fine. But that's a belief structure. I don't want to bring something that essentially has been working in businesses and has helped businesses grow and exceed new heights into my personal life. Now, I'm not saying that you have to sit down with a bowler and you have to go through, and track your wife and say, here's, everything that we're going to go do. But that doesn't mean that you can't take pieces of that and apply it into what fits within your current lifestyle for your house. And it's it's easier in business to track, let's just say revenue. Like let's just keep it simple. Number of amount of money coming into the business. It's easy to look at that and say, okay, if we're making $20,000 or we're making $50,000 and I need to grow it to $100,000, like it's very tangible things. So you get to look at lenses and say, okay, if you're only making 20 and you need to make, 500 or 50 or whatever the right number is, well, then that delta gap, you get to say, okay, what has to happen? So if I have a product or service and I have to go sell X amount of more to go fill that gap, then I know that's what the job that needs to get done. Can I go do it? Okay, if I need more people, how do I scale? Like then you can start to go into problem solving. But that's all very concrete numbers. It's different when you bring it into your personal life because you're now saying instead of hard numbers, it might look like, how do I have a better relationship with my wife? And what does that mean? It could be that you just have more fun together. It could be that you are just improving your communication together. That's where a lot of rationalization can come in because it's easy to say I've either made $20,000 or I've made $50,000. And if I've made 20, even though my goal was 50, what happened there? Why did that not work? But if it's I want it to be a better relationship with my spouse, you can rationalize. Well, it's good enough, but there's no, you wanted to be here and you didn't, and this is where you're at. So here's a gap until you go and experience that. What is your relationship with your wife right now? You can kind of do this in a non tangible way, right? You can outline out and say, how is your working relationship right now with your spouse? And I use a spouse example, but you can take the same framework and apply it into all the other areas of your life. Okay, what is the current version of your relationship with your wife look like? How do you interact? How do you talk to each other? Uh, how do you spend time together? Do you have enough of everything? Do you rank everything? If you need it to be objective, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you effectively communicate? And put a number and here's a little quick hack that I read. Can't remember which book it came from now. I think it might have been Tribe of Mentors from Tim Ferriss. And one of the people that he had interviewed, he said, choose when you do a number scale and you go 1 to 10, never take out the number seven because everybody wants to go to seven. And seven is one of those like I think it's good enough, but it could not be good enough. But if you look at a six and you go, well, there's definitely room to improve. And if it's an eight, then you go, you know what? Like that's actually pretty solid. But a seven kind of feels like I can rationalize that really easily. So on a scale 1 to 10, like how well do you interact with your wife? How enjoyable is it to be able to talk? Are you talking calmly? Right? If you say, how well you're effectively communicating. And 10 is that we can have discussions about any topic, about anything without getting heated, yelled at each other, and seek resolution. Like that's gold standard. And one is that you can't even it's a landmine filled or a field full of landmines to try to have conversations. So one thing said wrong immediately just triggers this and triggers that. And so now you're avoiding all of these conversations. You have things that might be bothering you, there's things that might be bothering her, but you guys don't have a open relationship to be able to talk about any topic that it needs to come. So that might be your one. So then figure out where you're at on that continuum, minus level set or minus number seven, figure out where you're at. And then what does a future state look like? So if you answer that and said, well, we're probably about a six, well, what does an eight look like to you? Define that, like clearly write it out and think about it. I ideate or I create ideas about what that number looks like, what it needs to be true for that to have happen. And then you get to start to get to work. Okay, well, why don't we? Why don't we talk about those certain topics? Is it because I'm afraid of what she might say? Is it I'm ultimately afraid that maybe the relationship would end if we start talking about certain conversations? Is it I don't really understand without just throwing it on the table? I don't know how to have some of these delicate conversations and navigate some of that. And so now when you iron out and say, what are the different reasons why you're getting to root cause? So if you answer some of those questions of like, well, why aren't you having them? Like do a five whys. Why aren't you having them? Well, because I don't feel like I'm comfortable having those conversations. Why aren't you feeling comfortable you have those conversations? I just don't feel like I've got the right words. Why don't you feel like you have the right words? Because I don't know how to necessarily articulate it. Okay. So now if it's around an articulation, you may not have to go all the way through five whys. But if you get down deep enough, you can then say, okay, if this is really the thing that I'm struggling with, well, then how do I get better at that? How do I go improve my communication skills? There's a billion self-help books on communication, how to speak, how to frame things, how to give feedback. Like in a business world, there's always the compliment sandwich where you give a compliment, then you talk about some growth opportunities, and then tap off on ways that they can do it or how you can help them. There's limitless ways that you can identify and go get the right skills in order to go improve that so that when you improve those communication skills, now you feel like you can start to have more of those conversations, in which point then you open that up and then you get to where it is that you want to get to. And that's a very simplified approach. And somebody I'm sure will be listening to this saying, well, that sounds super easy and simple, but you're not taking into account da 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 da. Write all that stuff down. Figure out where those mismatches are and sit with it and figure out, is this really objective or is this really subjective? And is it something that I can boil it down to a specific tangible goal? Or is it that I just have a lot of emotions around it, but I don't really know what root cause is? And this is one of the issues when I find people struggling, and that could be with weight loss, it could be with um, performance, it could be just around relationships, could be around money and finance, it could be with spirituality, it could be with purpose, it could be with literally anything. Is are you objectifying it? Are you getting it concrete enough, an ability that you can then take action on? Or is it still somewhat squishy and it's hard to kind of work through? And that is a skill set in all by itself. So not to be meta, where we're talking about the thing, but that is a skill set that if you feel when you're going through and you just can't seem to firm it up into a very objective, then that's a skill set that you can go learn. In a lot of it can come from watching and understanding how other people see it and work through it and see examples. So, whether it's YouTube, whether it's, you just reach out and give me a call, whatever the thing is, whatever your mechanism is, or maybe you know somebody who's really good at this, just pick their brain. See, what questions do you ask? How do you get to that resolution to get to a root cause so that you can start moving forward in your life? Because again, I did a post on this earlier this week that we had a bad storm and trees had blown over and I needed to support them. So I needed to put stakes in the ground and support them. Some needed very little stakes, some needed much bigger, more heavy staking, more support. And I said, this is just like real life. We all need some level of support. We just need to figure out who and where and how do we go get the right level of support so that we can then go to the next level that we're trying to get to. So this might be an area where you say, hey, I have tried, I think I've got some things, but I might need some support from someone, from something in order to go get this piece of my life rectified so that I can then go move forward and then ultimately get to the living or the type of lifestyle that I ultimately want. Okay. So I'm just looking over my notes. Yeah. One of the fastest ways to grow is to expose yourself to the people living at your higher standard because you don't know what you don't know until you see it. And I know, firsthand, I learn that lesson every single time, whether it's a new promotion within, my job, whether it's bringing on new clients, whether that's being around other happy couples, whether that's being around other fathers and seeing how they interact with their kids. There's always something to learn. There's always something either what to do or what not to do. And both of them are abilities that you can use to get you to the next stage of life, to become a better father, to become a better husband, to become a better business person, to become more financially astound, to figure out time management better, to find purpose and fulfillment. All of these different things that makes up all these different dimensions that makes up your current model of reality of the world, you get to see and learn by experiencing it through others and what they have come through, what they might be a little bit ahead of you. If they're a little bit behind you, then you get to go and turn around and help somebody else and pull them along so that it's not just you and your race, but now you're starting to help the other people in the race around you to go make their lives even better because you'll get fulfillment and purpose out of that as well. And you'll also start to understand and appreciate some of those concepts even more. Uh, One of the great philosophers has said, there's levels of learning, there's levels of doing. And once you do it, you kind of understand it. But when you have to go teach it to somebody else, your level of understanding and your comprehension just skyrockets because you're not only having to be able to learn it and do it and apply it, but now you have to articulate it and communicate it in a way that makes sense for somebody else to go take that action and move forward with it. So again, practice that in your own lives. And without a standard, you always default to comfort. This is true. This is true in every aspect. We have a standard. We have a standard of our relationships. We have a standard of how much free time we have. We have a standard of everything in life. What our body weight is. You can grab any one of these, like grab body weight. As body weight increases, there's some level of standard before people are willing to take action. There's a standard in how much time that you give to something. There's standards that we have in all aspects of life, and you know it because whenever something pushes up against it and you push back, that's a standard. You just might not be aware of that. Meaning, let's just take work for example. Somebody says, "Hey, I need you to work late, and I need you to work on this presentation that's due tomorrow." And if it's you normally leave at 4 and you have to stay till 5, are you okay to do that? What if it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? At some point, you'll say, sorry, I cannot do this. Like I have other things. Well, then that's a standard. So now you get to say, where are all your standards in your life? And are you happy with those level of the standards? Or is it worth looking at all those standards and saying, might not be good, might not be good enough? Like one thing for me is just around time management. I have gotten so much better over the years, but it's still not something that I'd say I'm really where I want it to be, because I still have a hard time saying no to things because I want to grab things, move things forward, help as many people as I can, whether it's in just simply at the airport, right? I can't help myself and I'll go grab somebody's suitcase to go lift it up in the bins. Whether it's somebody needs to talk and I'll spend an extra hour, hour and a half that maybe I didn't have to spend it with somebody. But a lot of I'm okay letting that standard float for now because every time that I've essentially allowed or taken on more, the things that I feel overwhelmed by seems to work out. So there's something in there that I'm learning, which is I might be prioritizing and saying, well, this is really important, even though now I'm starting to help and do other things. But then all of a sudden, the thing that I thought was important somehow gets solved. So then instead, so now I'm starting to learn that things are getting solved without me having to actively go do it. So there's a confirmation bias that I have, which is, well, things aren't going to get done until I do them. Well, that's a very A, that's a very me thing, but then B, that's a very limited to however much time that I have in a day versus letting other people pick up the balls that will help them, evolve and grow and learn new things and whatever else. Like one of the things this week was, being here in India. Obviously, there's a big time difference. So Amber had to make some calls to insurance companies for IVF and work through some of the medication and whatnot. And she panicked. She's like, "Oh my God, Eric does all this, and I have to figure this thing out." And she did. And she called the right people. She built some relationships. And now all of a sudden, she's got a really good working relationship with somebody in the insurance company. She's obviously got a really good relationship with the fertility doctor. And she now understands and realizes, like, hey, now I know how some of this stuff works, which fundamentally is always something that like look at where I go, I really want her to know all of this stuff because if something happens to me, heaven forbid, I don't plan on going anywhere, but if anything happens, well, then I want to make sure that she at least knows how to go deal with this because the worst thing that can happen is that something happens to me and then my family suffers because then I ultimately, right, I don't know where I'll be and what I'll be doing, but in that instance, then I have an immense guilt that says I didn't adequately prepare my family to handle things without me. I put myself in and made sure that I was the center that pulled all this thing together when in reality, I just want everybody to be taken care of. The easiest and fastest solution is for me to just jump right in. But then what needs to happen after is that you educate and make sure that your family has all the right information, right? Which could be a whole podcast episode all by itself, which is how do you go establish the right family unit and then go put in the right systems and practices in place that allows everything to continuously go without you being the person driving it all. You may have to drive in the beginning, and that's true in all areas of life, but it doesn't mean that that's how where it has to stay, right? You have to evolve that model of reality. Okay. So let's get into some practical stuff because we're coming up on a half hour, and I know I'm trying to keep things somewhat kind of condensed. So when we move into a practical step, what I want you to do is to pick one area of your life where you know that you're coasting and be honest with yourself. It's okay. Like, if you don't want to share it with anybody and you just want us to be your own exercise, just go get a pad and paper and just quietly write in the corner. What is an area of life that you're really struggling with? And if you're struggling to figure out where maybe you're struggling, then just do a wheel of life. Draw a circle and put spokes. Like imagine it's a pie, and right, you slice it and dice it, so then you have however many 6, 12 pieces of pie in each one of those areas. Put different dimensions of your life. One could be personal, happiness. One could be relationship with a spouse. Could be uh, friendship, social settings. Could be financial. Could be time. Could be spiritual. Could be purpose. Could be uh, overall health. Could be you get to fill in a relationship with your kids. Like you can just continue to keep adding as many dimensions as you want. And then in each one of those, rank yourself on 1 to 10, take out 7, and then say, where am I at? And figure out like what does 10 ultimately look like? And I think one thing that I know trips people up when we do this exercise, and I'm talking to them one on one, is they go, well, I don't really know what like success looks like. Or like, what if I aim too small for success? Like 10, like, one could just be like, hey, shit's just falling apart. Like it's just a straight dumpster fire and nothing's going on. But they really struggle to articulate what a 10 looks like. And I go, your 10 5 years ago isn't going to be what a 10 is today, nor what a 10 is going to be 5 years in the future. So just put something that feels like if this happened, you would just be elated. Imagine a perfect world where you didn't have to worry about triggering people and you didn't have to worry about all of the constraints that we put on, that we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough whatever. And that's your idealized dream state. And when you put your idealized dream state for wherever you're at in all areas of your life, you then get to change that as you do it. So I've had some guys where they go through their wheel of life and they say, okay, personal happiness right now, a 10, for instance, would be that I've got a job making X amount and am, I get to do all the things I want to go do. Then all of a sudden they find a girl and now their personal happiness or personal fulfillment 10 is I get to spend as much quality time with that person because I just love being with this person. Then they start having kids and now it's okay, now I want it to personal fulfillment is to be there present as a father. And then it grows to become now I want to get more involved in the church community and I want to go do this, this, and this. And so that number 10 changes with respect to time. Okay. So once you figure that out and you figure out which area that you're coasting, right, I mean, you can take Pareto's principle and say, like, okay, which your lowest number, choose that, use that as your case study. Write down what good enough looks like right now, then ask what, you kind of already know what great looks like. Now ask the hard question, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing what's required to go do that 10? Like, what's that gap? Like, what's preventing you from immediately in an instant to go from a 6 to a 10 or even just a 6 to an 8? Like, what does that look like? What's that gap and what's required in order to move the needle from this to that? And when you have that, then you get to go start to move in that direction. And it might say, well, it's here's why. And you go through and you rationalize and you say this, and this. Fantastic. That's the unpacking process. That's the now let's go deeper in every single one of those reasons why you said it can't be true and understand, is it a real reality? Is it a bias? Is it a model of reality? Is it a limiting belief that's keeping you back? Like, what's going to be the thing? And it might just be you don't have a great enough example. Go through your five whys and figure out where you're at. That might be it. But that's the unpacking process. And once you start to really go through that unpacking process, then you get to move forward. Then you get to say, okay, now how am I going to go take this forward? Well, I need to go do some homework. I need to go read some things. And then at that point, I need to go take it into action and I need to move forward. And it allows you to start to move in all of the dimensions of life forward and get closer to a 10 all around. Okay. So let's summarize all this stuff up. Growth doesn't come from wanting more. It comes from being honest about where you are. You have to just be brutally honest, and it's not fun. And I can say that sometimes it stings, but that doesn't mean that you have to stay there. Like one of my weaknesses that I had been working on was I would notice, especially when I travel a lot, and this is true in the camper and this is true in flying, is I would start to get really stiff and my lower back would hurt. And so when I started going through and saying, okay, why is this happening and blah, 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 what I've realized is that when you spend a lot of time sitting, you're overextending basically your lower back. Well, then when you stand up and you're not stretching in the front of your muscles, the front sides, like your quads, that then kind of goes into your hip. Well, those are all basically compressed. So you need to keep those stretched. So what I found is, okay, if I stretch at least once to twice a day, just do some hamstring stretches, now all of a sudden that problem goes away. And then I get to go in and say, okay, well, part of this is not necessarily just tightness of muscles, but now it's a lack of hip muscles. So now I get to go to work on that and say, okay, now how do I go strengthen up my hip muscles so that my whole lower back situation, I'm not living in pain and dealing with taking ibuprofen or whatever else in order to go solve the pain, but I'm going all the way back to root cause and saying I have a muscular imbalance that I need to go address. So get to work on that. That's what success looks like. It's not easy. I do this constantly, but when you go through, you get to realize where root cause is, and get to make the changes that now gives you a more fulfilling, holistic lifestyle that is scalable, which is repeatable, it is sustainable, it's all the abables that gives you this ultimate life, which I deem as the exceptional life that you get to live a life that is full of passion, purpose, and you know alignment. Honestly, that you get to have in your life. So if this hits, don't just think about it. Go unpack it today. Go through that exercise. And if you need help, I'm a phone call away, I'm a text message away, I'm a social media post away. Introduce yourself. I've got guys, introducing and setting up get to knows constantly. I talk to probably a solid 5 to 10 guys a week. Just chatting. Sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, been listening, want to chat more with you. Really like the podcast, or hey, this is what I did this past week. Fantastic. Reach out, because this is the only way that all of us are going to be able to grow. I don't look at this as, um, if you like, there's a lot of coaches out there where people will reach out and then they're like, well, now you have to go buy and you have to go to, I don't care about any of that. Like, the whole purpose of this whole podcast and man of class in general was to build a model of the world that I'd be proud leaving one day. And to me, I look at that as a lot of problems resolve in the world around men, and the lack of us being able to show up in all ways and to be able to serve in all ways that God meant us to. So, to be part of that solution, A, I've worked on myself over the amount of years, but then B, I try to help as many other guys see and understand maybe what's tripping them up so that they can show up better. Because I ultimately believe the world will become the best version of itself when a lot of guys are starting to show up in the best versions of themselves. So that's why I'm super passionate about this. This is why I always make the time in order to talk to guys, help them wherever I can, connect them with other guys that are helping, and ultimately will probably lead into a mastermind at some point, that'll probably kick off this year, that is, again, just pulling guys together so that they can learn from each other to build the best habits together, so that we can all, right? I believe that the rising tide raises all the ships instead of just one ship trying to go and be something better. It's we got to raise the tide so that everybody gets a better life. So with that, happy, don't know what today is, Wednesday. It's Wednesday morning over here in India. So it's probably Tuesday evening over there. But happy Wednesday, and we'll keep moving forward. Talk soon.